Andreas, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Sessions. We have an incredible opportunity of meeting great people in the music industry like yourself. And we have a chance to kind of interview and ask questions about your overall concept of what you have done with your career. And it's really about the next generation to watch these and seek out and learn about what great people have done in the industry. You have done so many great things at so many different levels. Tonys, Emmys, Grammys. It's incredible at a young age that you've surpassed careers of many people who are twice and sometimes three times your age.
Thank you.
I ask you, where did this begin for you when you were younger? How did music enter your life?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor. When I was a little kid, my parents listened to music from South America, which is where they're from Colombia.
Yeah.
And my father was always very interested in classical music. So between the classical music and the native Colombian music, that was my exposure. And I remember at a very early age watching BBC television.
Yeah.
And they had the CBC orchestra performing with Glenn Gould as the soloist.
Yes.
And I was enamored with Glenn Gould. There was something about him, and I've been talking about him for years. There was something about his approach, something about how lanky he was and how he sat very low and his arms were very high. But there's always something about the vocabulary of Bach that spoke to me. And there was something about the numbers that I saw when I heard the music.
Interesting.
And the association of his interpretation of that music, which in my opinion is the greatest interpretation ever of Bach's music. And I just became very enthralled with him. And I would sit and just watch him without interruption. And that was the beginning of my fascination with sound and with rhythm.
Explain the numbers. You would see numbers in your mind? And
Yeah, so I've always sort of had this very strange thing, and I've not talked about it too much, but when I hear parallel figures being played, and parallel figures in Bach's music are very common because there's a lot of counterpoint being done. So the left hand is doing things that the right hand is doing completely different things. They're completely opposite of each other. And so for me, the association was numbers and colors with the left hand, and then a separate set of numbers and colors for the right hand. And it was just something that happened, that occurred to me without thinking about it. I just saw them as I heard. So at a very early age, I started to figure out the prelude and fugue in C minor from the Well-Tempered Clavier, and it was the left hand that I started with.
Interesting.
And because that was the left was always the first thing that I heard.
And it was on piano?
It was on my dad's organ. But I always heard the lower notes first, for some reason. The lower frequency spoke to me before. And then I graduated to the right hand. And then much later I would put the two together. But I mean, it was...
Other instruments that you play?
Yeah, my first love is the guitar and the piano and the bass. So I started playing drums, but it was sort of by accident, really. And, you know, I didn't have drums, so I did what everyone else did, banged on pots and pans. But my big thing was my sister loved to read, and I got into the band Rush, and his drum set was so massive.
Oh,
that
Neil Peart, it's extensive, yeah.
Incredible footprint for a drum set. So I needed lots of books. And so what I would do was I would arrange the books in order of pitch for whatever the song was, and small to big. And the floor was the bass drum because it was the lower sound, the lower frequency. And my mom gave me a portable record player, and Permanent Waves was the first album that I owned that was handed down to me by my brothers.
Yeah.
So I would just sit and practice to that. So between the classical music, the native Colombian music, and then the classic rock and all the stuff that my three brothers and my sister were listening to, I had an array of music to sort of fall into.
Boy, you seem like you really put yourself in all the different styles of music that was happening at the time. And
yeah, I didn't have a choice. I mean, they were listening to R&B, you know, like the great R&B, the Ohio Players, the Commodores, you know, Grand Funk, you know, all these incredible groups, Earth, Wind and Fire. And so there was no, it was like, it was a no-brainer.
How exciting. And do they play instruments, your brothers and sisters?
Most of them are in law enforcement. My sister works for a pharmaceutical company, so I was sort of the odd one.
Yes, that's what happens in the music industry. So where did you go into playing professionally? How did you make that switch over?
Well, in Rochester, there's a great, thriving music scene.
Yeah.
And there was a great school called the Hochstein Music School, which still exists, which is sort of a smaller brother to the Eastman School of Music.
Right.
And no relation. They had like a program for young students, and they offered me a scholarship to play guitar in a rockabilly band that they had. And so I played the guitar, and then, you know, there was a need for a drummer, so I started playing the drums. And that was pretty early, and you know, that rockabilly band actually took off. It became like this really great group.
Yeah.
And it was headed up by a guy named Gary Chudik. And he ended up getting gigs at local bars, and so I started working very early when I was a kid. And you know, we grew up rather poor, so it was important for me to work, and I worked a lot. And yeah, so I worked in that outfit playing rockabilly music, but real rockabilly music, playing other styles like Eric Clapton, you know, but in that range. So for me, it was important to really have that technique stuff, but I never took lessons.
What's amazing about it is that I interviewed Steve Gadd, who's been a dear friend of mine for 40 years, and from the Rochester area, and went to Eastman. And it seems like that area in Rochester, there was a lot musically going on.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah, you know, Chuck Mangione, Gap Mangione were there, Cab Calloway's from Rochester.
Yeah.
And I mean, Jeff Tyzik. There's just a slew of people that are from that area or that passed through there. Ron Carter was there.
Absolutely.
At Eastman. He was there with my music teacher when I was a kid growing up.
Nice.
And that's the next chapter in my life was when I got to high school. My music teacher, Ned Corman, recorded on Land of Make Believe with Chuck Mangione. He was intimate friends with Ron Carter.
Yeah.
So he started a thing called the Commission Project. And with Meet the Composer, they brought famous musicians to the school to spend a 2-week residency.
That's amazing.
And so the ironic thing, which is very exciting for me, is that they've invited me. I'm the 47th guest artist to be invited. So I'll be there in 2 weeks performing.
That is exciting.
Yeah, they're going to premiere 4 pieces of mine. There for, you know, a 70-piece choir and strings and a wind ensemble and jazz ensemble.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so the whole thing's sort of full circle.
So you didn't take lessons, as you had said. So
You couldn't afford it.
What was the driving force that made you learn this to be able to have the skills that you have?
In life, you can take 2 roads. My mom is a huge champion of mine and a huge influence in my life. And because of her influence and how incredible she is, I think I took maybe the better road. And I was able to really focus on something. Some people focus on sports, others focus on acting or dancing. The music was so important, and my family was very supportive of that. And there was never talk of, oh, you know, you need a real job.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working as a chef already when I was in high school, cooking and bringing home meals, and I was paying part of the utility bills when I was very young already. So it wasn't like there was a need to talk about that.
Right.
And there was something substantial there already at a very early age that we knew that, okay, if we continue playing or we continue to do stuff with music, that eventually it's either going to fizzle out, like it does in most cases, or it's going to turn into something.
Right.
So I had a lot of influence, an incredible role model with my mom.
Well, that's powerful to have that experience. You know, one of the challenges that many young people have is their parents do not support them.
That's true.
So not only are they having challenges in trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve in the music field, but then they have that obstacle of their parents not supporting them.
That's right.
So how fortunate that was to have that for you in that stage. So where did some of these, you know, jobs happen? I mean, you played with Ron Carter. I mean, just so many great people that you played with, Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah.
How'd that all come about?
Well, so my music teacher, Ned Corman, like I said, he had this thing where they would invite guests, and it was called the Penfield High School Jazz Fundraiser through Meet the Composer and the Commission Project. And he had personal relationships with all of these. And I'll tell you, Max Roach, Ron Carter, Slide Hampton, Dizzy Gillespie, John Faddis, Dave Taylor, Jim Pugh, Steve Gadd. I mean, the list goes on. And can you imagine the impact that would have on a normal human being, much let alone a young, impressionable student? Yeah. So there were so many people that were, and to answer your previous question, Ned was another incredible inspiration for me, and he actually bought me my first drum kit. And I think it's a story worth telling. I would sit in the band room. There was a posting for a drum set that was for sale. It was an old Gretsch kit, 18-inch kick, 22, all the toms.
Like a little bebop kit, yeah.
Yeah, but with all the toms that you would need, you know, the case, the hardware. So I remember sitting there, and one day he walked in, he said, yeah, you know, you like that drum set? And I said, yeah, it's amazing, you know, I'd stare at it quite a bit. And the only exposure I had to drum kit really was at the school, at any of the schools that I attended, or the after-school programs. So he said, you know, one day you're going to have a drum kit. And it must have been a week and a half later, a check came in the mail with a note saying that he and his wife wanted me to have that drum set, and that they didn't want to be repaid. They wanted me to use it as a tool. And I'll fast forward the story. When I went to college, I got an endorsement with a company. I called him and said, Ned, I think I should give this back to you. I now have a different, and I have to use this other drum company, you know. So the original owner was a graduate of the same school, and he decided he wanted that drum kit back. So he donated his kit to another kid that needed.
How great.
So it's just a wonderful story. Absolutely. And a very special thing. And without that, I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I had. So
beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So you were living in Rochester. You moved down to New York?
Well, yeah, I was in high school, and my first gig during high school was the circus. So I played with the circus because the drummer got sick or something like that. And then I took the tour for, must have been 8 months or something like that, with the circus. And that delayed my college, but I got a scholarship to go to Manhattan School of Music, and I went a year later. So. Interesting.
So where did reading music come in? Because that's a skill you have to really kind of learn and understand.
Yeah, it was really in high school. Ned he sat with me, and you know, he taught me a lot about reading music. He taught me about theory. He spent so much time with me.
How
and
beautiful.
And he encouraged me to sit and play the piano.
Absolutely.
Super important.
So the theory really kind of opened up a whole other world of you understanding it. Did that lead into composition? Did that lead into...
Oh yeah. I started writing music pretty early on. I was so fascinated by... I thought music was already written. You know, which I was very naive. I thought, oh my God, it's written. You know, now we're just going to play what's written.
Right.
And then one day, you know, they were talking about composition. Well, you can write your own music. I was like, you can write your own music? This is amazing. And so I wrote like a little blues. And then from there, I just continued to write music on the piano, the guitar. And yeah, it opened a different world for me.
Do you have a writing schedule? Is that you know? Do you try and put yourself through certain times during the day or week that you write, or is that something that just kind of comes up intuitively?
Yeah, I mean, I think because my schedule's been so chaotic the last 10 years of my life, it hasn't been the kind of thing where I've sat down to write music every day, which is what you're supposed to do. I'm fascinated by Hans Zimmer and his...
What a great composer.
He's incredible. I'm actually signed up to take one of his online courses and there's thousands of people that get to do that.
Yeah.
But he sits and explains to you his thought process and how he composes music for a film, and he'll admit to you, I have no idea what I'm doing. The minute that I see the time code and this...
And the images that are on the screen.
Images, something moves me. And that's the brilliance of what I think of art and what we do, is that not all of it is preconceived. Now, when you think about way back when Bach and Mozart and Brahms were composing music, they were doing it from their brain to the paper. Yeah. And that's still a level that a lot of people today are not at. It's extraordinary to me.
Yeah. Well, there are certain gifts and certain skills that you learn and certain ability that we acquire. Right. It's amazing that that's kind of a little bit of everything that what you've done in the process. How did you get into the Broadway show? The work that you've been doing. You've done so many great shows.
So I'll tell you quickly. The Broadway thing started when I began college in the 90s. Eli Fountain is an incredible percussionist. He worked with and boomed with Max Roach. And Max was a mentor to me, and I spent hours with him.
What a great guy. I knew Max also. Took
Yeah,
lessons with him. What a beautiful, philosophical, always getting dressed up and wearing sports jacket and ties.
He was a beautiful man.
Classy guy.
Absolutely a beautiful man inside and out. And I spent hours with him. I cataloged all of his music, all the stuff that's sitting in the Smithsonian right now, that because of legal reasons they haven't actually done anything with it. I did all of that cataloging,
Nice.
and it was a lot of work.
So you came out of school and...
Well, I was in school. It was my first year, and Eli called me, and he's like, listen, there's this thing, Jelly's Last Jam, and I have to be absent for some time, and I need someone. Can you do it? This is what it pays. And I didn't even think about it. I was like, yes. He's like, are you a union member? I said, no. He's like, well, you better go join the union right now. I went immediately and joined the union. I didn't even tell my professors that I was going away because I didn't know that I had to do that. I had no clue what I was doing. And eventually I figured out, the system of how it would work, and I picked up the music, and I was playing percussion and drum set. So in that show, if you're familiar with it, the percussion starts with Gregory Hines.
Back and forth, yeah.
And the drummer goes on stage and isn't really playing. So whatever he's mimicking whatever is really being played in the pit.
Right.
So I had to jump from percussion to drum set. And man, it took me some time, but I spent hours. I didn't sleep like the first 3 days. I was just studying the music, and I had never done that before. And it was 2 acts of music.
And they gave you recorded music to listen to, so you had a chance to learn it that way?
They did, but I did it on an airplane on my way to, to the first city. So, I mean, it was like literally, here's the music, here's the thing, the next day you're catching a flight to St. Louis.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it was something, man.
You seem to be a very spiritually based person who has this leap of faith that you might not exactly know what you're doing, but you full steam ahead, you go for it.
Yeah, you're right.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think that I got that from my mom too. My life has been really, I've been blessed. There's a part of my life where I had a rough go with a car accident that I had, and the recovery from that sort of made me appreciate and see life in a different way. The things that I got through and was able to recover from, it makes you appreciate things. And listen, the trip that we have here is short. The time we have is short, so every moment counts.
Absolutely.
Every little thing that we can do. And if you feel unsure of doing it, sometimes those are the ones you want to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I've always been the first one to jump in the cold pool. I'm not afraid. I'll do it.
Yeah, there's a saying that I have in one of my new books coming out. It says, in this crazy game of life, understand no one gets out alive. And it really is a short time that we're here. If we can maximize that time, you seem to do that so well. From the circus to all the jazz artists that you played with, to all the Broadway shows that you've done, which have been diversified. In the Heights was a whole nother level of what was happening.
Yeah,
right?
it was a special show.
Yeah.
That show saw me through a lot of stuff in my life.
Yeah. But your music was always there. It seemed to be the cushion that allowed you to have the hope to continue.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith, and I believe in fate and karma, and I believe in humanity. I believe that we wake up and we do the best that we can, and we treat people with respect, and we're good to other people, even people we don't know. We do it for ourselves because it's the right thing to do. And as a father, it's never been more important to me to share that with my kids. And it's something I live by myself. Every day I live by that, and I instill that in them. And there's no greater mirror than that in your life.
That's a very powerful, those are core values and principles that you have. You're a great example of it, because the balance of the insane journey of this business that we're in, and then balancing family.
Right.
As I have 3 children, you have 3 children. There's a balance there that we really have to be careful that we can empower our children and our family while we're still maintaining the intensity of this business.
That's right.
You do this so well.
Well, I have, my wife we all have people in our life. My manager is my best friend as well. And my wife, between the two of them, I realized that mistakes are part of the journey. But it's in getting up from each fall and how we get up, and being able to see the next area where I might slip up so that I don't do that, you know. And it's all about, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. You know, this is a human thing, and we forget that we're human. We forget that we're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. Absolutely. And that's part of what we do. Every night when I play that show every night. It's such a big show. Yeah. I've never in my life, someone asked me today, I've been asked probably 5 times already, do you get bored? I said, I'm never going to be good enough to be bored. I'll never be that good that I'll ever get bored playing a show that continues to teach me how much I still have to learn.
And Hamilton has broken all records on what it is, you know, not only attendance, but musically it is such an intense, you have to be attentive every second of that show.
Yeah, you cannot walk into that show having had, some strange emotional thing happen to you that day. Right. Those things have to be checked at the door, because the minute you start playing, if you bring it down below the level you set, the show reminds you that it's not going to work that way. There's an intensity that you have to maintain because it's an emotional show. Yeah. And that emotion is real. Yeah. It's palpable. Yeah. It's very special.
Well, it's amazing that you have had these experiences that have guided you to who you are today. This, the session is about the next generations. Yeah. That when they watch this and they look at this, and even many of the names that you mentioned, I always say it's important for them to understand those names and do some research to find out who those names were, the Ron Carters, the Dizzy Gillespies. These are powerful names, Max Roach, of names that if they tap into people that have influenced you in your life, they're going to understand more about you, and they're going to open up many, many doors of opportunities to learn more about these other great legends.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say if we said in closing, what could you say to the next generation? Advice that could prepare them, that could guide them, that could inspire them, that could give them the direction that maybe you had or maybe you didn't have.
Right.
What would you give them?
The first thing I would say is you have to play your instrument for yourself. You have to play your instrument because you love to play your instrument, or sing. Whatever it is that you do, it has to start with that, without thinking that one day you're going to be rich and famous from doing it. Yeah. But if you're so passionate about doing it, then you have to research all the things that, they don't talk about in college. Universities don't talk about pit musicians, unions. Do research about your union, your local union. Without my union, I wouldn't be able to do what I have. I have a retirement plan. I have health benefits. I can afford to care for my family because of that. They protect you. And those things all trickle down to other jobs you can have. It doesn't always have to be the biggest. You don't have to be a rock star. And within that, you can make a very good living playing music and own a home and have all the things in life that someone has in a 9-to-5 job. Yeah. Research different styles of music, the things that you thought you didn't like. Listen to them and give it a chance. Country music, rock and roll, polka. I've played it all. But really learn it authentically and take the word authentic and let it become part of you and part of what you do, because in the end, the fingerprint that you create for yourself is not just yours, it's all the influences that you've had, that you've taken, and that's what creates it. But in the end, you'll have your own sound based on that. All the different styles of musicians you've listened to, the different kinds of music, and research other instruments. If you're a drummer, learn a little bit about the flute. Great. Learn a little bit about the harp. Great. About other instruments, so that when you get on stage, your communication is easier. You have a deeper understanding of what the struggle is for that particular musician. There's so many things to that question. Absolutely. I could go on forever.
Well, that's beautiful, because you are really the example, Andreas, of what you've just said. Having that wide array of open-mindedness that brings you to a point of a higher spiritual level, because you keep on lifting yourself, and you are the motivating force behind your self-learning.
That's right.
So when that happens, magic happens. You are magic when you perform, and I've seen many, many times when you perform, when you are out there playing, you embody all of these principles that you speak about. That is huge. That is the best example, that when someone is familiar with your playing, just are you playing and the smile on your face, that's really what brings it to the forefront. We thank you so much on behalf of the sessions.
Thank you.
You have done great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andres.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Bring it on. Great.